welcome to Afflictions Sugarcoated, a podcast where we sugarcoat some of the world's so-called afflictions and rate their plausibility on a scale of 1 to 5. I'm Minnie Kim, and today we'll be sugarcoating the dodo bird's extinction. So I was first introduced to this concept called the dodo bird when I first discovered YouTube as a child. I was obsessed with America's Got Talent and American Idol at the time, and things like idol shows all over. That just gave me time to spill. And what I especially liked about these shows is that they always had failures. For example, some of the videos that I watched was probably something like top 10 American Idol failures, and one of the top ranked videos was about Ian Bernardo. If you search up his name right now, or even if you search up American Idol Dodo Bird, you'll find this video. In sum, it's this guy from New York that claims to be a dancer, a singer, and a superstar. But in fact, he's not the greatest singer and dancer in the traditional sense, and right now, I don't know. He's famous in the way that if you jump onto his YouTube video, you'll kind of remember him for the rest of his life. But I don't know. I'm not going to comment because I don't know much about singing and dancing and superstarring. But it's safe to say that he wasn't the next American Idol, at least to most Americans. So he entered this audition, and there's Simon Cowell in the judging platform, who we all know is very much a savage, let's say. In much of his shows, impressing Simon Cowell is the ultimate challenge, and when you are impressed, you'll get the golden buzzer or whatever other yeses, let's say. Anyways, the guy goes up and sings, and it's not great, and the judges tell him that it's not great. And Cowell and Bernardo get into kind of a fight, I want to say, and Bernardo gets escorted out by security. And right after the audition, as he's talking to another host kind of person, he says, quote, "You know what I'm doing? I'm calling the National Geographic to let them know that the dodo bird is not extinct, it's in there." And his name is Simon Cowell. And you hear this upburst of laughter of people sitting behind the cameras, even myself, because it's a pretty good joke. It's a funny joke. It came out in his New York City accent, and it was really fast. Anyways, it was a great show. But as always, let's get into the overview of the dodo bird and how it became extinct. The dodo bird gets a scientific name, Raphus cuculatus. That is Latin, I do not know how to pronounce that. It was endemic to Mauritius, a volcanic island in the Indian Ocean. They lived in forests and coastal areas, feeding on fallen fruits, nuts, roots, and possibly small land animals. Because Mauritius had no large land predators, the dodo evolved without defensive traits. Now, its physical characteristics, I mean, I'll say the measurements, but you'll probably best know if you search it up in Google yourself. Its size is about 1 meter or 3.3 feet tall, and it weighs about 10 to 18 kilograms or 20 to 40 pounds. Its plumage is described as grayish or brownish with curly down-like feathers. Its head and beak is large, bald, and bluish gray. Its head has a distinctive hooked beak up to 9 inches long, and it's possibly used to crack hard seas or defend itself. The wings are very small, very useless for flight, but likely used for display or balance. Its legs are stout, yellowish with strong claws, and it's good for walking, running short distances, but again, it's a bird and it can't fly. Its tail is made out of tufted or curly feathers. It's almost comical looking in sketches. That's probably why it's so liked. Its diet was mainly frugivorous, or fruit eating. They ate fallen fruit, seeds, nuts, roots. Some evidence suggests that they swallowed stones to help grind tough food in their gizzards, which quite frankly doesn't make sense at all. They may have eaten small land animals like lizards or insects, but they were pretty harmless, I would say. In terms of its reproduction, it was a ground nester. It laid a single egg at a time, and its vulnerability came from there. Eggs were easily eaten by rats, pigs, monkeys, introduced by humans. This slow reproductive rate accelerated extinction once predators appeared. In terms of its behavior and temperament, it was flightless, but it wasn't clumsy. Evidence suggests that they were adapted to running and walking, similar to modern flightless birds like the kiwi or ostrich, but slower. It was tame, and it was curious. It had no fear of humans, which sailors exploited, and its social structure was unclear, but it likely lived in small groups or pairs. And now the sad part, the extinction. They were discovered by Portuguese sailors around 1507. Then they encountered Dutch colonists, 1598. They were extinct by the late 1600s, less than 100 years after the Dutch colonization of Mauritius. And the main causes were overhunting, introduced predators, and habitat loss. But its symbolism and legacy remains. The phrase as dead as a dodo is completely extinct. People say it all the time, so I guess the dodo lives on there. In terms of its symbol, it's a human driven extinction, ecological fragility, innocence exploited by colonization, but we'll talk more about that later. But there have been some recent explorations of the dodo bird, even if it's gone for quite a while now. People are still modeling the bird, finding out more and more with modern technology, and it makes you think, is it really worth it to study about a bird that went extinct centuries ago? Just why? But I guess that question applies to everything. So here are the recent advancements in dodo research. Number one, the dodo, in fact, wasn't slow or clumsy, it was actually agile. A groundbreaking 2024 study published in the Zoological Journal of the Linnean Society re examined centuries of literature and existing dodo remains. Contrary to the long standing image of the dodo as a fat, slow, or unintelligent creature, researchers found that its tendons were exceptionally powerful, indicating that it could run or climb much like modern fast moving birds. In fact, it might have been able to sprint similarly to a bustard, and its extinction likely wasn't due to a lack of fitness, but rather invasive predators. Secondly, in terms of de extinction ambitions, where we do stand in bringing the dodo back into the earth. In terms of Colossal Biosciences, a biotech startup, it's actively exploring the possibility of reviving the dodo via genome editing. They've sequenced the dodo's DNA and hope to engineer hybrid birds using the Nicobar pigeon, the closest living relative, as a surrogate. The aim is to rewild these birds in Mauritius one day, although we'll see how that goes. It's important to note, though, that fully recreating a dodo remains scientifically elusive and ethically controversial. There's no proven resurrection that's occurred yet, although the methods being developed may aid broader conservation efforts. That's by the New Yorker. So I guess a lot of this is in fact impressive or it's funny, but to be honest, I find the dodo bird's extinction to not be so incredibly funny because of how it went extinct. And it's pretty ironic when you think about it. The dodo bird, which was funny then and funny now to talk about, went extinct because of colonization. More more specifically, we'll go into the setting. The island of Mauritius in the Indian island was uninhabited by humans until the late 1500s. When Dutch sailors arrived in 1598, they found an odd, plump bird that had no natural predators, and this was the dodo. It appeared about a meter tall, stubby wings, a large hooked beak, and an ungainly waddle. To Europeans, it was comical, clumsy, and at first seemingly useless. So, why exactly did the dodo vanish? Well, the first cause is human hunting. Sailors and settlers killed the bird for meat. They wanted food. Some records suggest that it wasn't even good meat, it was tough and greasy, but when you're at the sea for months, any fresh food mattered to them. And secondly, they introduced animals. It was more devastating than hunting, actually, when the colonists brought in animals like pigs, dogs, cats, monkeys, and especially rats. They devoured dodo eggs, which were laid unprotected on the ground. In terms of the third cause, habitat destruction, colonists cut down forests for timber and settlements, and it shrunk the dodo's environment. And within less than a century, by the 1660s or so, the dodo was gone. So, why is the dodo so quirky? Well, the dodo had no natural fear of humans, so sailors could simply walk up and club it. This made it a strange colonial joke. Early sketches show sailors dragging them by the neck like oversized chickens. Its extinction was so quick that many Europeans doubted the dodo had ever existed. By the 1700s, it was almost mythical, half real, half sailor's tale. And the dodo later became the poster child of extinction, one of the first times Europeans realized that human expansion could actually erase a species. In terms of symbolism in colonial history, the dodo represents the naivety of isolated ecosystems colliding with colonial exploitation. It's both quirky because it's a waddling, flightless bird mocked by sailors, and it's also tragic. Its end marked the beginning of a very long pattern of colonial ecological devastation. In modern times, as dead as a dodo, it's a phrase, I guess. So it lives out in fragility and folly. In the end, it's still dead. Now, why am I suddenly bringing up the dodo into this podcast? Well, I was sitting in Korea watching TV. Almost every couple of channels that I switched to, everything was about our Independence Day. So, our Independence Day was August 15th, 2025, and it was the 80th year celebrating it. And if you don't already know, Korea was colonized by Japan for decades, even before the two world wars, and it was detrimental. Millions died, cultures were swept up. Like most colonizations, it can't be summed up into words the amount of people who suffered, the amount of people who were killed. There were independence movements that led to shootings and killings. It's unimaginable to think about it now. And I think it was unimaginable to think about then. One of the things that I found very ironic growing up is that I really like cherry blossoms. Cherry blossoms were basically everywhere here. Down the street, along the road. You can find it almost everywhere. And it's a very pretty tree, but at the same time, it was brought in when the Japanese were colonizing Korea. So it is a direct mark of the blood that was shed. It's a bit sentimental, but at the same time, it is true. So when I learned that the dodo bird became extinct with that specific colonial history, it was sad, to say the least. At least there weren't any humans that were killed in the process. At least there wasn't a bloodshed independence. But a species was lost at the end of the day, and it was colonialization. There are some famous quotes that I would love to read out. Some of them say, Mauritius was made first, and then heaven, and heaven was copied after Mauritius. And this quote, attributed to Mark Twain, highlights the incredible beauty and allure of the island. He literally compares it to heaven. Then there's the Latin motto of Mauritius, meaning star and key of the Indian Ocean. I'm not even going to try to read the Latin one out. It encapsulates its strategic importance and unique place in the world. And then we have the Mauritian Creole phrase, meaning everywhere flowers regain their colors. And it speaks to the natural beauty and rejuvenation of the island's ecosystem. Of course, they weren't able to bring the dodo back. It's truly amazing what humans can do to each other, but it's also truly amazing what humans can do to animals, and vice versa. It's hard to empathize with the dodo birds, partly because their extinction was quite some time ago, and because we're not animals the same way that the dodos are animals. Actually, we are, but we just don't like to think so. We're significantly sadder when a human dies than when a pet or wild animal dies the same way. And because it's difficult to even begin to sugarcoat such history, I choose not to, and instead take the dodo birds at face value. Those creatures that were very difficult to understand, it's manageable some way or another. we probably just have to try. So I give the sugarcoating of dodo birds, but not its extinction, a 3.5. This podcast was written and produced by me, Minnie Kim. If you have any comments or reviews, please feel free to write any and all thoughts on your podcast reviews. If you'd like to suggest an affliction for me to sugarcoat, please email me by afflictionssugarcoated@gmail.com. And if you have the time, try to search up what a dodo bird looked like. It's quite amazing what a creature it was, but it's also hard to imagine. Also, if you want to brighten your day, do indeed also search up about Ian Bernardo. It's both funny and admirable at the same time. Alright, have a good day, and I'll see you next month.